The OpenAI bot beat Dendy 2-0 at the International, but let's see if we can learn anything from analysing the bot and how it played. It also beat Arteezy and Sumail. In this video I'm going to start off with a brief introduction for 2 minutes on AI and why this one is so special. After that we'll look at gameplay from Sumail and PyCat. The AI which you see in most games have predefined states. For say in a basic game you might have something like attack, patrol and flee, and you transition between these states. And in bigger games what you have is more states, and you also have different variations of animations and reaction times, etc. But when it comes to Dota 2 it becomes a quite challenging process and very tedious process as well, where you have to create and maintain over 100 characters. Becomes so much work that has very little advantage to even high skilled players. It doesn't scale up. However, the idea with this AI is that it can learn from its mistakes and it can constantly improve, and it's not predefined, so it can even challenge the best of players, and it can also update itself and adapt to new changes within the game. This is the ability of machine learning. In this video you'll see 3 bots, and I'm going to call them A, B and C. The first one on August 9th beat Arteezy 0-10. That bot also beat Sumail 2-1. Now version B just got significantly better and Sumail lost 0-6. Now version C is the one that you would have seen on the live stage against Dendy. Beat Dendy 2-0. However, it had improved significantly, that if you played version C against version B, that the average win rate of version C was 60%, so it would have been an average like 3-2 if they played 5 matches. The bot which you see that OpenAI is developing is using a method called reinforcement learning, which is essentially playing against itself over and over again, and it will try and learn from its mistake, increase its probability of winning. It also uses a human to help it along its way. It uses the human incentives a lot more near the start, but then as it goes on it relies more heavily on its ability to analyze basic values such as last hits, health, mana, etc. It uses these values and tries to predict short-term and long-term goals. So for example, they might get a last hit now, which will be advantageous, but it may not work out well in the long run because they take harass at the same time. So essentially the bot is trying to predict the best route to take in terms of its decision making. So first up is Sumail, and the one thing you'll notice every single game is that the bot has a really impressive block. In this game in particular you'll notice that the bot focuses on killing the range creep first. This because the range creep gives 10 extra gold. Generally it's considered a bad thing to push your lane with the range creep, but we'll see how the bot solves around this. This 10 extra gold is gone towards an earlier salve timing. You'll notice that right here, one hit and then a second hit onto the range creep. The creeps get aggroed and they stay up on the high ground. The bot is flying out a salve and the creeps get hit by 2 tower hits. You'll notice this time when he aggroed the creeps that they never got hit by the tower. You'll see that as a kind of a concurrent thing happening, of where the creeps never get hit by a tower when they're aggroed. They constantly stay at the maximum tower range. The bot also uses harass as much as possible. The bot is after salving up, he's full health, and it's calculated that there's a really high probability that he won't die and that there's a chance that he could succeed, even though he was standing on the low ground there. That this kind of positioning wouldn't be very desirable in a 5v5 because you get ganked. This is something that you can do in 1v1, and you will see this happening regularly over and over again within these matches. You actually see the bot showing off its ability to understand tower aggro and is pressuring Sumail as much as possible. This again positioning is only possible in a 1v1 scenario. The bot is trying to get in range for the double raises. So right now the bot has really low mana and has only a fairy fire currently, but he's flying out a salve. Usually the bots pick up a mango, but here you see now that the bot is being put under a lot of pressure by Sumail. He's doing a really impressive job of harassing him back. So right now the bot is actually calculated because Sumail took a tower hit that he only requires 2 hits and 1 raise to kill. And when he has such high health, there's a really high level of probability that he'll win. But the most impressive thing about this is that the raise was using the prediction, the path of Sumail, and that's something that's pretty hard to get the bot to learn how to do. Next up is Pycat, and the first thing you'll notice is that the bot lets its ranged creep go first. This allows the lane not to push. However, you'll see that even at this, Pycat manages to manipulate the creep wave in such a way to his advantage. Now here you'll see that the bot uses a fairy fire. Now generally that's a bad fairy fire usage, but I assume the bot may not have been able to predict what skill build that Pycat used, so in case that he actually used raises on level 1, that he might have been able to kill him if he got a triple raise combo off, but that's highly unlikely. Personally, I think that that's a minor improvement that could be made in the system. So you'll see as well that the bot cancels its attack animation multiple times to try and bait out the opponent to missing last hits. Here you see that the bot actually let their creeps go under the tower. Typically players will try and keep the tower creeps outside of tower aggro range, but the strategy here is to actually push the lane. You'll see here now that the bot actually gets a really high value raise, so there's kind of a probability being calculated in the background, trying to see, okay, how can I use my mana most effectively? And here the bot actually gets to kill 2 creeps plus harass on Pycat, which is very desirable. Even though it was only level 1 raise, it was still quite a valuable usage of mana. Typically Shadow Fiend on level 3, when you have level 2 raises, that you can do significantly more damage, but in this scenario it happened to be quite high value to just use a single raise as a guaranteed 2 last hits as well. Now this regular occurrence of the courier being used over and over again will fly out a mango plus a salve each time, and this actually instant burst of mana can catch players off guard. Even the bot will get caught off guard, you'll see in the future, by this play, and it applies a lot of pressure to the enemy. Now Pycat's doing a really good job, similar to what Sumail was doing, of applying pressure in the scenario where the bot has no mana and has somewhat decent health. Now the bot is actually calculated that it's really risky to stay in lane. The bot just plays it safe, goes back, gets the courier as quick as possible. This is somewhat faster, but they're also losing out in experience. When the bot left the lane, Pycat was 9-1 in last hits, but when the bot comes back to the lane, Pycat is 14-4. So even though the bot only wasted about 20 or 30 seconds, Pycat pulled back a decent lead out of this. Yet the bot is still only 1 or 2 last hits behind. Now actually becomes even within a couple of seconds of coming back into the lane. So the bot is really accurate with its last hit in comparison to even really high skilled players. You'll actually see that the bot uses 2 raises to kill creeps on the high ground. This is so they can push the lane and go back for the courier, because the courier has a salve, and the really important thing that's after happening is that it's coming to night time. So they use a mango and salve and places a ward on the high ground. This is due to the fog of war change at night time, and the bot has somehow calculated that there's a massive advantage to having a ward on the high ground at night time. This happens at every 4 minutes, and this is something that you didn't see in Sumail's match, because the match didn't even go to 4 minutes long. I'll fast forward through this part and you'll see the same thing over and over, just harassing and last hitting. And the main things to focus on is that Pycat actually pulls ahead on last hits, even though the bot was beating him by maybe 1 or 2 all the time. And he got that small window where he pulled ahead as well, where the bot had to go back for the courier. He actually is now about 5 last hits ahead and 1 deny ahead. As well, you'll notice that he actually has a wand. This is his key to beating the bot, and it actually tricks the bot out because it relies very heavily on its ability to measure the health bar and mana bar, and also it uses other metrics such as last hitting. So here you'll actually see Pycat will go into a very aggressive position even though he has much lower health and lower mana. That you can only technically have the ability to use 1 raise, if not 2 raises, because the bot may not be able to take into account of the wand. The positioning of Pycat actually tries and keep outside of the aggro range of the creeps so that the range creep doesn't attack him while he's going on a one-on-one fight. So it's a very fair fight for Pycat, and there's no creeps involved, and he ends up winning that fight then with usage of the wand. In part 2 I'll be covering gameplay from Arteezy. I'll give a conclusion about the AI and see where it can go in the future and